There are tons of meals in the stories of the pages of the Bible, and every one is significant. Really, the whole Bible, the story of the Bible, it gets kicked off with a meal, and then a meal gone wrong. So, after God first creates everything, he takes the man, and some of his first words to the man is about the meal, like what you can eat. He says, you may surely eat of every tree in the garden, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. From the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. Then the next scene, right after that, is God seeing that, he says it's not good for the man to be alone, so he makes a woman for him, brings her to the man, and the man's overjoyed, and he says, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Now I don't have to eat alone anymore. He doesn't say that, but basically. Things are good for a while, but then Satan comes along, just like he did with Jesus in the wilderness, in the desert, and he tries to corrupt and ruin the meal. But with the man and the woman, he's actually successful. He's successful in convincing them that the meal had a different meaning than the one that God meant for it. So God says the meal is for life, for joy, for relationship. The snake says the meal is a means to power. It means to power, which is interesting. It's quite eerie to see how we can do this. Think about how you can use a meal as a means to power by like who you invite over, maybe for a party, and who you don't. Think about banquets that are held for political candidates and how much you have to pay for a plate there. A meal as a means to power. Meals matter. They're spiritual. They're deeply spiritual, and they're meant to be so. I think we have such a tendency to disconnect our spirits from our bodies, disconnect the spiritual from the physical. We tend to think that they operate independently from one another. It's simply not true. Our souls are connected to our bodies. So what we eat, how we eat, and who we eat with, that affects us spiritually as spiritual people. When we eat food, there's literally chemicals that are released in the brain that physically affect your body. You add in the scenario then that the discussion adds in the context of a meal with that. So say you're having the conversation's going well, like sitting at a table and falling in love with somebody. A lot of joy connected to your experience. Now say the conversation doesn't go well. Then you might feel anger, frustration, and stress literally in your body. You ever gone to a doctor and like, I think, stress may be at work here somehow because of how it affects your body. One of the books I've been reading lately is a book titled The Body Keeps the Score by a doctor named Bessel van der Kolk. And a lot of the cutting edge studies right now being worked on the physical human body is really through the studies of neurobiology. We've got some guys at UCSD actually working in that field. UCSD is one of the top places in the world for studying neurobiology. The central tenet of van der Kolk's book is that the most significance of our events of our lives, they actually leave like a trace or a brand in our body and what we feel and how we store it. And that can have either really positive or negative effects. So victims of trauma, they'll store certain things in their body so that if they'll have a physical reaction, if there's an incident that kind of is something similar to what they experienced, whether it was consciously or unconsciously. It'll trigger a memory that then inadvertently you start reacting with your body, like biting your nails, scratching some part, your head, your face, looking down. So it can affect your body, what you actually do with your body. On the positive side, and this is really why I'm bringing it up, not so much because of the negative stuff, is that when we have positive experiences with people, with our bodies, with safe people, that can actually end up bringing health and healing and wholeness. Eating a meal is something that we do with our bodies, and eating with the right person or persons can really end up making it a saving experience for you. Meals can end up having a lot of meaning for the whole course and direction of your life. In our passage for today, look again at verse 32 and what it says about what happened in their eating the meal with Jesus. Did not our hearts burn within us when when he opened the scriptures to us. Not talking about like heartburn from like eating Papa John's, like I had last night. I just Richtered. Did not our hearts burn within us? In Luke's gospel, he records John the Baptist saying at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, when John the Baptist sees Jesus, says, "Oh, Jesus, he's going to baptize you with the Holy Spirit and with fire." We're like, what's that all about, fire? I think this example of Jesus with the meal and what they say, their hearts burning within, is a good example of what the Holy Spirit's fire does. One of my favorite commentators, pastors of all time, John Calvin from the 16th century, he says this on it. He says, "This inward warmth of the Spirit, it stirs the affections, burns out impurities, and kindles a fervent love for God." That's what the fire of the Holy Spirit that's burning within does. So much can happen in a meal when we look to it not just as something to receive physical nourishment, but something where we also receive spiritual nourishment. Meals are meant to have meaning. There are times that God's Spirit can work in us so that something that can just seem so common, just like a meal, can become immensely meaningful. So, in light of that, let me just ask, are you just eating for fuel? Are you just eating for fuel, or are you looking at meals as times of spiritual grace for God to work through? Are your meals meaningful, or are they meaningless? In our family, we always gather around the table to eat together for dinner, and before we eat, we always pray. And that prayer, it's not some magical incantation, Lord, bless the food to our bodies. Of course the food's going to bless your body unless it has E. coli in it or something, okay? That prayer is really a prayer inviting the presence of God into the meal to bless our conversation, to bless our time together as we eat and share life with one another. That's what we want. That's what we need.